First of all, as all of us, can you see the board here? I'm not sure if you can catch that angle. That big blue thing in the middle says culture of revenue, culture of revenue. Here's something that's ironic. I know exactly how to make at least $500,000 in the mortgage business. I fill out this tracker. I make my calls. I'm behind this week, full transparency. I make my calls. If I get in front of 2 people a day, if I highlight 5 of these boxes yellow, which means I set up a coffee appointment with a new realtor or took a new application from a new referral source, if I do that 52 weeks out of the year, I know I'll make at least $500,000. Ironically, what I don't have quite dialed in is what is the lead generation system for Consolidated Coaching. So favor I'm going to ask you, so I don't have to be some pushy weirdo, is if you know somebody who would benefit from this type of daily check-in, can you send me an email and introduce us, Scott@Consolidated Coaching? Just introduce me to somebody in your office who maybe needs a little pick-me-up in the morning, needs some of this coaching, needs some of this accountability, because what we're trying to build in Consolidated Coaching, instead of the company existing to make sure that Mike and Chris have a job, we're trying to build a culture of revenue where, I don't know, we make money and there's maybe some profit left over for me at the end of the year on this venture of this coaching thing, because as much as I like doing it, my wife doesn't really like me doing it for free. So that's the culture we're trying to build in the coaching business. What's the culture that you should be trying to build in your personal business on the mortgage side of it? And one of the things I was talking about this morning with some crew coaching members is they have been great, and I mean really great, at creating a culture of phone calls. And it seems silly, and it seems simple, and it seems trivial. And this is the interactive part of the coaching call. This is the interactive part of the coaching call. So go to your keyboard in the chat box, or if you're watching this replay on Facebook, I want to know if you've ever been frustrated with somebody on your team, a closer, a processor, an LOA, yourself. Have you ever been frustrated with the amount of emails back and forth, text messages back and forth, where you're like, dude, just pick up the phone and solve the problem? Am I the only one who has experienced this? Oh, I got an absolutely with extra exclamation points from Mandy. So that is, oh, totally my pet peeve. Yes, Mandy feels what I'm saying. So I was talking to a couple people today. Yes, you are special every freaking day. Glenn, I know you are challenged with this. So building a culture of phone calls. I got this idea from somebody this morning where every single time an issue takes more than 2 emails to solve, she's just jumping in and saying, hey, that should probably be a phone call. Hey, let's make that a phone call. Hey, let's jump on the phone and take care of that. And the culture that she's building is, if it's going to be more than 2 emails back and forth, like here's one-way information, here's the information back, and or just a simple thank you email. If it's going to be more than that 2 email exchange, it needs to be a phone call. If it's going to be more than 2 emails, it has to be a phone call. If she sees things bouncing back and forth and she's getting CC'd and BCC'd, she sets the example. She picks up the phone and she's like, hey, Bill, let's conference in Susie. This needs to be a phone call. This can't be 97 emails back and forth, something lost in translation. And so she, this person that was talking about this, is building, and this was kind of a culmination actually of several conversations, but these loan officers I was talking to this morning, they are building this culture of phone calls, culture of phone calls. Hey, if it's back and forth to the client more than once, like if you send a request to the client, they send something back to you, and now you're going to have to request something else, or request clarification, or request an update, or request a missing page 7 of 7 of the bank statement, because that's more than 2 emails, needs to be a phone call. Needs to be a phone call, needs to be a phone call, needs to be a phone call. So that's the culture of phone calls that they are creating. Now, this is the additional interactive part of the call. How many of you have had this experience? You're text messaging with a client and there's like questions back and forth. The client keeps peppering you with questions and you're finally just like, fuck, I don't want to answer all of that by text message. Let me just pick up the phone. You call the client, the client's, oh, thank you for calling me. Or thanks for picking up the phone. Has this ever happened to you? Where there's that back and forth of like text message, and you're like, what am I doing? Like, this is a very complicated financial communication. Let me just call right now. And then the client is super happy you called and you're like, well, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you can always call me. Like, why are you in the rhythm of trying to get all your answers, your questions answered by text? Like, a lot of our clients just think that's the only way people communicate now is by text message. So if you are going to impart this culture of phone calls onto your team, then you need to take responsibility and impart this culture of phone call on yourself, meaning that if there's more than 1 or 2 text messages back and forth, pick up the phone, give them a call. Even if you know they're right there on the phone because they're texting you and you go to voicemail, leave them a long voicemail explaining what it is you need to explain and get off your chest and kind of bring clarity to, and then send them a text message. Hey, just left you a long voicemail. I think I answered all your questions. Call me back if you have questions. Call me back if you have more information. So picking up the phone. Oh, Mandy said it for me. Picking up the phone is the biggest time saver. I was going to say almost exactly the same thing. We're on the same page, Mandy. I think I'm going to add more to your plate, make you a coach at Consolidated Coaching. So ask the client to call. Yeah, pick up the phone and say, I'm even in the car, even if I'm not. Okay, so that's one thought. Build this culture of phone calls so that if it's going to be more than 2 emails back and forth, if it's going to be more than 2 text messages back and forth, you have to pick up the phone and make the conversation happen and create that personal responsiveness and that personal connection. Because if you don't be bitter when we as an industry get our teeth kicked in by Quicken because they've automated everything. Because if we're not adding that personal touch, if we're effectively just a text bot back and forth, or if we're effectively just an email paper pusher, there's no differentiation. Okay, so that's how you create a culture of phone calls. Now, this is like level 2 stuff. This is for everybody that's actually paying attention. How do you maximize your impact once you create that culture of phone calls with your processor, with your LOA? How do you scale your business? How do you replicate yourself? How do you keep the business high touch, personalized, but also scalable where you don't have to do everything? And here's the magic saying. Hey, I was just talking with Scott. So what I want my LOA to do every time she calls a client, has to call a realtor, call a title company, call an escrow company, I want the conversation, her name is Ann, I want the conversation to say, hey, Tracy, this is Ann. I'm calling from Scottsgrove's office. You know, Scott and I were just talking about this deal that's under contract, and we really need to get the updated buyer's statement. The title company, the escrow company hasn't been super responsive. So could you, Tracy, the realtor, could you jump in and just help us get this updated buyer's estimate? Because we need this in order to issue the CD. I was just talking to Scott about that, and we definitely need to get this moving. Look, I have no clue what's going on with the CD. I don't want to be involved in the buyer's estimate. I don't want to be involved in balancing fees and all that shit. But what it does is if my LOA needs to call the client for something, which again, we're creating that culture of phone calls, and if she needs to call a client or a realtor or somebody who I want to scale my presence in front of, I want her to start the conversation with, hey, was just going over your income with Scott. Hey, I was just reviewing your file with Scott. Hey, Scott and I were just looking at that amendment for the request for repairs or the closing cost credit or whatever the case may be. If I train my LOA and my processor to start every conversation like that, what I end up having is I end up having this scalable model where everybody feels like Scott's involved. Everybody feels like it's a high touch Scott Groves process. And really all I'm doing is I'm coaching my own LOA and my own team and my own executive assistant on how to talk to other people so that I have the most scalable impact. You know, for example, I've got a really good friend of mine who's a doctor. But every time I call him, we get in like this 25-minute political conversation. Like he's one of my closest friends. I can't just call him and say, hey, Steve, we moved up to this new area. You're in the medical community. Can you refer me a new pediatrician for my kids? Because that's going to turn into a 25 or 30-minute phone call that I wasn't prepared to have yesterday, and I was super busy yesterday. So I had my assistant call my friend Steven, which felt kind of douchey up front, felt kind of obnoxious. That's probably the wrong word. Sorry if I offended any of the ladies. Felt kind of obnoxious for me to have my assistant call a good friend of mine for something I couldn't have done. But she just picked up the call because I've coached her on this and said, hey, Steven, this is Danielle. Yeah, you know, Scott's assistant. He's in a meeting. We were just talking about how important it is for him to get the kids to the right pediatrician. Do you happen to have a recommendation up here? Boom, sent us 3 recommendations for pediatricians. And it gave that personal touch just by having my assistant, and in other situations, my LOA, my processor say, hey, I was just talking to Scott about this. I was just talking to Mandy about this. I was just talking to Elvin about this. and that will help scale your presence. Now, here's the key so you don't get caught lying or caught with your pants down or caught in a situation where you screw up the deal. When the client or the realtor does get you on the phone, right? So you've created this culture of phone calls. The clients know and the realtors know that we're going to pick up the phone. We're going to be proactive. We're going to solve problems if it's more than 2 emails or more than 2 text messages. So you've solved that. Now you've created a situation where the LOAs and the processors and everybody on your team is scaling your influence because of the fact that they're using your name in vain, right? They're saying, oh, I just talked to Scott. I just talked to Mandy. I just talked to Brad. We were just going over this income. If that client or realtor then pins you down and gets you on the phone, you have to have you have to eat your humble pie. You have to be aware enough that you can say, hey, you know what? Anne is actually better equipped to answer this question. She's a little bit more involved in the file. Let me get you right back to her so that you can answer the question. Because here is where I've seen this go all wrong. You create a culture of phone calls. You train or coach your LOA to use your name in vain and say, oh, we were just reviewing this. We were just reviewing this. We were just going over this. Then somehow the client or the realtor gets you on the phone. And you're like, I don't know. Well, then you have to revert back to that Tim Brahim perfect loan process where once you hand off the baton to the next person in the system, you don't take the baton back, okay? You can't hand off the baton and say, hey, I trust Anne to get this deal to closing and calculate the income and track down the buyer's estimate and make everybody feel comfortable and use my name in vain saying that I'm checking in on the entire process, which I'm really not. But then if I try to take the baton back and answer loan-specific questions or deal-specific questions, I'm going to blow it all up and I'm going to say something that contradicts Anne, or I'm going to step on my own toes, or I'm just going to screw something up. So create the culture of phone calls. Coach your people to use your name in vain. Hey, I was just checking with Scott. We were just reviewing this. We were just on a pipeline call. I just went over all this with Scott. Here's what I need. And then stay out of it. Trust your people to actually close the deal. And if the realtor or the client does get you on the phone and try to pin you down, hand that baton back to your LOA and say, you know what, Anne's actually the best person qualified to answer this. I'm sure everything's fine. Instill your confidence. Talk about how great your LOA is. Hand the baton back. Move on. Go get another deal. Make more calls. As you can tell, I'm fired up. I'm on this 4-day juice. I haven't eaten any food except for I cheated. I had 1 burrito. I haven't eaten any food since Sunday. Lots of mental clarity from all the juicing and the gallon of water I'm drinking a gallon a day. So I hope this helped you. I hope this was good stuff. We'll get this edited and up in Facebook. And I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And please, 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 if you know anybody else who would find value in consolidated coaching and what we're talking about and being part of this Facebook group or being part of one of the crews, I would love a introduction. All right, talk to you soon. Love you all, and I will see you. Hold one. Am I going to see you today at 11 a.m.? I think we do have a coaching call scheduled at 11 a.m. today. Yes, we do. So I'll see you all at 11 a.m. Pacific today. All right, talk to you soon. Later. Bye.